Hi everyone, and today in this video we are going to understand a very interesting and growing industry, which is the Ozempic and the weight loss industry. So the company we are going to read today is Shaily Engineering. So I would suggest everyone to watch the whole video because there are a lot of good, interesting and important data points which everyone needs to understand. So just a quick disclaimer that this is not a buy or sell recommendation. So let's start with understanding that what Shaily Engineering do. So Shaily Engineering is the India's largest exporter of the plastic components, and one of the specialty of this company is that the machines and the tech they currently have in the company is very interesting and very few companies in the world have it. So the company was started in 1987 and they provide end-to-end solution in the plastic products which is of very superior quality. So currently in the company they have more than 2000 employees, and along with that they have more than 200 injection molding machines which are in Gujarat. Then after that, Shaily also does business with a major Swedish home furnishing company. So along with this Swedish company, they have entered into the carbon steel business, and in this they will combine plastic and steel to make the product. And one of the interesting point of Shaily Engineering is that they are one of the licensed processor of the Torlon in India, which is a material used in the semiconductor, aerospace, defense, EV and the automotive industry. Now let's take a look at some of the unknown facts of Shaily Engineering. So there is a company called Sanofi. So before Shaily Engineering, the Sanofi pens were manufactured in Europe, but then afterwards for the first time they went out of Europe and they started business with Shaily Engineering, where they manufacture two versions of the pen. The first one is the All-Star Classic, which is the regular plastic pen, and second is the All-Star Pro, which is the metal pen. And currently the All-Star pens are manufactured globally. Now let's take a look at the shareholding pattern of Shaily Engineering. So promoters have currently 43.7% stake in the company, and if you take a look at the FII are currently holding 9.7% stake in the company, and one of the biggest FII, which is a Smallcap World Fund, so they hold 3.8% stake in the company. Then DIS hold 14.1% stake in the company, and one of the biggest fund, which is the Motilal Oswal, so they hold 9.6% stake in the company. And lastly, the public holding is 32%, and within that one of the biggest investor, which is the Ashish Kacholia, holds 3.2% stake in the company. And now let's take a look at the history of Shaily Engineering. So in 1980 the company was actually started with the name of Anmol Trading. Then afterwards they started two injection molding machines in Gujarat, and in 1987 they started a company with the name of Shaily Plastic Finishing, and Mr. Mahendra Sanghvi took a 60% stake in the Anmol Trading Company. Then during 2001 they merged multiple group companies which were Shaily Engineering Plastic, the Shaily Plastic Finishing and the Shaily Tech. Then during 2002 they started business with the Swedish home furnishing company, and fast forward to 2012 they started manufacturing insulin pen for Sanofi, and lastly in 2021-22 they had set up a Shaily UK Limited company, which is their subsidiary. And Shaily Engineering currently has done a 200 crore capex, and within that 200 crore capex 150 crores is allocated to the healthcare division. And now let's take a look at some of the injectors they make. So now we are going to use some terms which are very important to understand that which company makes which drug. So the first injector they make is the Protean, then they also make Neo, then they make Axiom. Then within the Axiom, the drug which is used inside the injector is the teriparatide, which is made by Eli Lilly. And second, if you take a look at the Toby auto injector, so the drug which is used in this injector is the semaglutide, which is made by Novo Nordisk. And now let's come to the next segment, which is the industry overview. And this is one of the very important segment of the whole video because there are a lot of good data points which I think is going to be helpful for a lot of people. So these are the type of drugs which are made within the diabetes market, and GLP-1 is one of the fastest growing within all this segment. And here we can see that in FY22 the GLP-1 market was 21 USD billion, and in 2023 it went up to 31 billion, which is a 47% growth. Then even if you take a look at the US branded diabetes market, so in 2022 the market of GLP-1 in USA it was 14 billion, and in 2023 that number went up to 22.4 billion. So that is a 52% jump. And lastly, if we take a look at the diabetes market outside the USA, so the GLP-1 is 6.6 billion in 2022 and it went up to 9 billion in 2023, which is a jump of 36%. So after reading this data point, it's very clear that why are we reading about this company. And now let's understand about the supply chain of the GLP drug from the drug part to the final finished product part. So the first part in this supply chain is the API, which is the main drug which cures the diabetes and the weight loss part. So currently the three famous GLP drugs are the liraglutide, the semaglutide and the tirzepatide, and the key players who have discovered these drugs are the Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. Then afterwards, the second step is the fill finish process part, where the API, which is the main drug, is filled into the pre-filled syringes, and the key players in this segment is the Catalent, which is acquired by Novo Nordisk recently, and there is also OneSource, which is the Indian company who is in the fill finishing part. Then the next step in the supply chain is the innovators and the generic companies, and I think many people might know about this thing that in 2026 the semaglutide drug is going to expire, and after that a lot of generic companies are going to make the same drug at a very cheaper rate. And there are some few Indian companies who are already focusing on this part are like Dr. Reddy, Biocon, Sun Pharma, Cipla, then Aurobindo and Zydus too. So this war is going to be very interesting, that which company is going to make the first semaglutide drug. And the last part in the supply chain is the injectable device manufacturing, and here comes the Shaily Engineering, where the GLP drug and everything is assembled in the injector, and Shaily Engineering make those injectors. Now let's take a look at a very interesting data point of different type of companies with different brand names in the GLP drug. So first let's take a look at the Novo Nordisk. So they have a drug which is called as semaglutide, and within semaglutide they have two brands. The first one, which is the Ozempic, which is very famous and renowned in this segment, and the second one is the Ribelsus, where the Ribelsus drug is made in the oral form and the Ozempic is made in the injection form. And now let's take a look at Eli Lilly. So they have a drug which is named as tirzepatide, then they also have dulaglutide, and within the tirzepatide they have two brands. The first one is the Mounjaro and the second one is the Zepbound. And recently in the news you would have seen that Eli Lilly has came up with Mounjaro, and they are going to partner with some Indian CDMO companies to make this drug. And now let's take a look at another interesting data point. So here we can see the different type of GLP drugs, and if we take a look at semaglutide and the liraglutide, which is made by Novo Nordisk, the weight loss which is achieved by these drugs is 6% by liraglutide and 21% by semaglutide, whereas if we take a look at tirzepatide, which is made by Eli Lilly, so that gives a weight loss of 23%. So from this data point we got to know that Eli Lilly is much stronger and much better compared to Novo Nordisk. And currently the semaglutide market is much bigger than the tirzepatide, but it is expected in the future that the tirzepatide is going to increase and it is going to eat the market share of semaglutide. And now let's take a look at some interesting data points and the updates in this industry. So recently Eli Lilly launched their weight loss drug Mounjaro in India on 20th March 2025, which is a once weekly injection. And one of the interesting data point of this injection is that it is going to be priced around 4,300 rupees for 5 mg, whereas for 2.5 mg it is going to be priced around 3,500 rupees per week. So this price point is actually one of the lowest in all over the world, but still I think many people would find it expensive. And currently the highest dose of drug which Eli Lilly has is of 15 mg. So a patient in India might need to spend a $200 per month, and they need to take a weekly dose of 5 mg. And now let's come to the second interesting data point in this industry. So currently Eli Lilly is making an oral form drug which is also called as orforglipron, and currently in this industry the oral form drug which is available is made by Novo Nordisk, which is called as Ribelsus. But there are some issues in this oral form drug, like the weight loss which is achieved in the oral form drug is less compared to the injectables. And the oral form drug which Eli Lilly is making currently, they are expecting to launch it in 2026, and after the launch of the oral form drug, that can actually serve as a strategic hedge where they are currently reliant on the tirzepatide part. Then the next point is the Shaily Engineering injectables are going to be used in approximately 70% of the semaglutide drug, and currently in the Shaily Engineering, the healthcare division accounts for 25% of the total revenue. And if we take a look at the estimated cost of their GLP pens, so it is approximately 200 rupees per GLP pen and 50 to 60 rupees per insulin pen. And now let's come to the next part, where we will see the revenue segment in Shaily Engineering. So there are three revenue segments. The first one is the consumer, the second one is the pharma, and the last one is the industrial. And here in pharma segment, we can see that in FY23, they had a revenue of 580 million in FY23, and in FY27, that number is expected to be around 3200 million. So even though this revenue segment might be smaller than the consumer segment, but it is expected to grow faster than all the segments. And now let's come to the next segment, where we will do the financial analysis and the peer comparison part. So this is a little old data, but the purpose of using this is to forecast their financials for the next 2 to 3 years. So in FY25, Shaily Engineering has beaten all the estimates they have expected over here. So I have also confirmed this data point by comparing this with Screener. And if we take a look at the FY27 projected earning, so it is expected that they're going to give a revenue of 1094 crores in FY27, which is a growth of 20%. And even if we take a look at their EBITDA and EBITDA margins, so that number is expected to be around 277 crores and EBITDA margins of 25.4%. And even if we compare their EBITDA margins with FY24, which is 18.1%, so that is a very good growth. And lastly, if we take a look at their PAT and PAT margins, so in FY24, they gave a PAT of 57 crores with a PAT margin of 8.9%, and in FY27, it is expected to be around 163 crores with a PAT margin of 15%. So here we can definitely expect that how fast Shaily Engineering is going to grow in the future. And lastly, if we take a look at their EPS, so they had an EPS of 12.5 in FY24, and in FY27, it is expected to be around 35.7, which is almost triple. And now let's take a look at some of the valuation ratios of Shaily Engineering. So first, let's take a look at their ROE. So in FY24, they gave a ROE of 12.5%, and in FY27, that number is expected to be around 20.2%. And even if you take a look at their ROCE, so in FY24, they gave a ROCE of 16.7%, and that number is expected to be around 27% in FY27. Even if we take a look at their CFO by EBITDA, so in FY24, that was 79%, and in FY27, that number is expected to be around 71%. So from this data point, we can say that they're efficiently converting their EBITDA into cash flow. Even if we take a look at their debt to equity ratio, so in FY24, they had a debt to equity of 46%, and that is expected to be around 19% in FY27. So here we can see that they're also focused to reduce their debt. And lastly, if we take a look at their PE valuation, so in FY25, currently it's trading almost around 85 of PE, and currently they're trading at a forward FY27 PE of 41. And now let's take a look at some of the peers of Shaily Engineering. So there are two competitors. The first one is the Ozempic, which is a Swiss-based company, and they also manufacture injections. And the second one is the Multibagger packaging, which is in the consumer and the industrial part. And recently, if you guys have noticed, so Multibagger packaging has recently gave a very good quarterly result. So first, let's take a look at the growth in each companies. So the revenue growth, which is expected from FY24 till FY27 for Shaily, is 19.4%. For Ozempic, it is 21%, and for Multibagger, it is 16%. And next, if we take a look at the EBITDA expected growth, so for Shaily, that number is 33.5%. For Ozempic, it is 32.6%, and for Multibagger, it is 17%. And lastly, if we take a look at the PAT growth, so it is 41.9% for Shaily, 27% for Ozempic, and 16.2% for Multibagger. So growth wise, we can definitely say Shaily is going to grow very fast, and compared to competitor, it is growing very nicely. And now let's take a look at the details they have discussed in the last con call. So the first point, management has emphasized that they are targeting 30% revenue from their medical devices, and they are going to expand into adjacent fill finishing part, packaging, and they're also focusing on their device intellectual property and the manufacturing part. The second point is that they have not given any explicit revenue or segmental growth guidance for the coming future. The third point is the management is expecting 70% growth in their pen volumes, and for FY26 they're expecting to make 30 to 35 million pens versus 17 million pens which they made in FY25. And lastly, they have talked about the oral form drug, which is one of the main risks for this company. So they have said that the oral's projected market share is going to be around 20%, but injectables are going to stay for the coming future. Now, after reading all the good data points of Shaily Engineering, let's take a look at some of the risk in this company and in this industry. So the first risk in this company is that they are currently converting their clients very slowly, and because of this their customer concentration risk has increased. Then the second risk is the oral form drug, which is made by the Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, and because of this reason the stock price has also fallen recently quite drastically. And the last risk is the product quality risk. For example, the Funsource specialty chemicals which make the fill finishing part, they have recently tied up with Dr. Reddy for the current launch in Canada. And now let's come to the last part where we will do the technical analysis. So here we can see that in April 2022 they came up with an IPO and got listed in the markets at the price of 450 rupees, and after that they made a low of 200 rupees in 2023. But after that we can see that the stock gave a very good upward momentum. They made an all-time high of almost 2000 rupees in June 2025, and since the news of the oral form drug which came in the market, so the stock price again came down to 1600 rupees. So according to my view, Shaily Engineering is going to do good in the coming future because the industry is growing very fast and injectables I think are going to stay in the future. So what do you guys think that how Shaily is going to perform in the coming future? Write it in the comment section. And thank you for watching this video. I hope this detailed analysis of the Ozempic market and Shaily Engineering was helpful, and see you in the next video.